Warning, the following podcast contains spoilers. So if you don't want to know that the nightmare becomes reality, stop listening now.
The International House of Horror.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the International House of Horror podcast, a low-budget podcast for low-budget horror movies. I'm your host, Rocco, aka TheMadPancaker, and across from me is none other than my co-host, Scary Perry.
Hello there.
How you doing over there today, Scary Perry?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Before diving into our main feature, let's get to our hotcakes for this episode. You want to kick us off? You got any hotcakes this week?
I'm hot cakeless.
You're hot cakeless this week. No hotcakes. And that's because Delores, on her way over here, with our order, finally, the dumb klutz, she fucking tripped and fell and the pancakes went fucking everywhere. Now we gotta wait for J-Bones to make us more pancakes.
This is my help.
Maybe we are already dead. That might be a theme coming up.
Oh,
Not to, well, we're going to be spoiling everything anyways, but not to jump the gun here. So I got a few hotcakes this week. We'll kick things off with my first hotcake. So recent purchase that I made that came in the mail today. Picked up from Arrow Video. They released a 4K Ultra HD version of Dario Argento's Deep Red, or Profondo Rosso, if you're Italian. Probably one of my favorite giallos, one of my favorite Argento films too. I probably don't like it more than Suspiria or Inferno, but it's definitely my favorite of his giallos that I've seen so far, and probably my favorite giallo of all time too. So glad to have that in my collection, all fancy, and got a poster and a book and all that fancy stuff in there. I haven't opened it yet.
Arrow does a good job with their packaging.
Yeah, they got some
Blu-rays. That looks really nice.
Yeah, they put out a pretty spiffy product. I think they also have versions without like the book and stuff, but even the shell casings look pretty nice. The Ultra ADs, they got like how Blu-rays have blue around them. This has like a really nice black around them for 4K. It looks really sweet. On to my next hotcake. So I'm a bit puzzled why Scary Perry's still sitting across from me over here. Did you wear the mask that Connell Cochran gave us for the big giveaway at 9 p.m. like he told you to?
Yeah, I did.
Were you tuned to the right channel? I think it was on 3 different channels. The big giveaway?
Yeah.
I think you're shitting me here. God damn it. Plan backfired. I mean, on an unrelated note, 50,000 children on Halloween night all of a sudden perished as their brains melted and turned into all sorts of creepy crawlies. Completely unrelated to our favorite sponsor, Silver Shamrock Novelties. Although there are reports that Connell Cochran was cackling quite loudly, but that's neither here nor there, folks.
It's kind of macabre.
I might have one more kind of big hot cake. It was kind of my Halloween sequel idea, because who knows when I'll get around to talking to this later. It's been on my mind lately with us just coming out of the Halloween season and talking about Halloween. If you want me to save that for another day, or you want me to dive right in?
Dive in.
Dive in? Alright, so, and this is kind of before Halloween 40 came out, 2020 as we sometimes call it, the 2018 version. But my idea going into that one is, so obviously you have this new separate timeline in 2018. They should have just crossed over all the timelines and made them canon, like some sort of parallel universes colliding type things, and then you just up the ante and you got like, let's see, so in the first timeline, you could also have the timeline end right at 2. So you got Michael Myers and, well, Michael Myers dies in that one supposedly, but you could also have him come back. So you'd have like 4 or 5 Laurie Strodes and like 4 or 5 Michael Myers running around, and it's all just like pandemonium. And you can have them at like different eras too. Like you'd have, like I said, the Halloween 2 Laurie Strode, if you go by, you know, just ending the series there. And then you can have, well, in the Cult of Thorn trilogy extension, she's dead. But you could also have then the H2O version running around before that continuity got, you know, eliminated. And then of course you have the 2018 version. And they're all just running around and there's like 4 Michael Myers. And, you know, you could even have the different Michael Myers duke it out a little bit. Something crazy like that. And of course you'd also have the Halloween 3 timeline colliding in here for no reason, where Halloween is just a movie. And Tom Atkins can be talking about how he either saved or didn't save the children.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I think it might be possible that somebody put something in your Halloween candy.
No, see, and this is one of my things with the Halloween franchise. At some point, the problem is it tries to take itself too seriously when it went campy a long time ago. Because that's the thing with like other slasher franchises like Friday the 13th.
Seriously? Busta Rhymes doing karate moves?
The problem is they're still trying too hard.
Do you know how serious that is?
Yeah. I don't know what to tell you, man.
Busta
No,
Rhymes?
they were trying. They were still trying at that point. They're still trying now, of course. I mean, it's a little over the top now, starring Sylvester Stallone. But like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, at some point they realized, making more sequels, it's camp at this point, just embrace it and make it a hilariously good time. Whereas Halloween is still trying to be like the original and be scary and all that, and it just doesn't quite work. So I feel like this would be the perfect time to just like go balls to the walls and collide them together, all the universes, and like have this big Michael Myers battle royale where they're fighting them. I don't know exactly what the plot would be in there, but I mean, just cross over all the timelines. Laurie Strode's have to team up. You can even have prosthetic faced Loomises running around.
You don't have faith that they'll wrap it up well?
I'm just saying this was
Halloween
before
ends?
2018 came out. Nah, they might. I mean,
Anthony Michael Hall saved Halloween Kills.
yeah, but that movie still has a lot of problems. Like I said in the last episode, I thought it was just okay. And Mike Myers just goes on a rampage in that one. That's pretty much the point of it. It's just a filler movie. Get your money and hook you in to watch the last one.
Yeah,
But I feel like
the kills in there are great.
just go over the top, do something that's never been done, have like 4 or 5 Mike Myers running around, something crazy like that. And I have no idea what the plot would be other than the Laurie Strodes, and maybe if there's still 1 or 2 Loomises that managed to, because it would also be like, it wouldn't be like spot for spot, okay, this is every Laurie Strode from 2020, it would be like Laurie Strode's from like I said, because the Halloween 2 one ends right at Halloween 2, you'd have that Laurie Strode. You could also have Jamie Lloyd in it, of course, from the,
There'd only be
or Paul Rudd.
2 Laurie's actresses.
Well, there'd be 3, at least. Because you can also say the timeline just ends
The actresses?
Yes.
You'd have 2.
You'd have 3. Because you can also just cut off the Halloween 2 timeline right at
Jamie
Halloween
Lee
2.
Curtis and the Rob Zombie one.
No, every time they reboot the series, there's a different timeline.
Oh, okay, I get you.
So
Well,
when
this
they
is Back to
split,
the Future
yeah,
stuff.
just have parallel universes colliding type stuff. And like I said, they don't have to be like perfectly, it's 2020, that's the year, all the Laurie Strodes are the same age. Like I said, just, prosthetics or CGI over them like they like to do now. But the ending would be, I do have the perfect plan for the ending, because you have the Halloween timeline, or Halloween Season of the Witch 3 timeline crossing in. You have Tom Atkins, because, Michael Myers, indestructible killer, no matter what, he keeps coming back. You gotta beat evil with evil. He puts the silver shamrock mask on their heads and makes them watch the magic pumpkin. And then, all the Michael Myers heads melt, and then, Michael Myers is finally dead for good, stopped by none other than Tom Atkins.
Would he still be screaming into a phone at the end, though?
Maybe, I don't know.
Because
Look, it's just a loose idea. It's not like a screenplay that I've sat here for thousands of hours and hammered out.
I think somebody put something in your Halloween candy.
No. I love the idea. Like I said,
All right.
rather than what we got with the 2018 version, which is okay, but it could have been better too.
Can Busta Rhymes be in it, though?
Yeah, why not? I told you, all the continuities are crossing over. Laurie's technically dead in that timeline too, but you could make it work. You could retcon some things in and out. I mean, they retcon everything in these things anyways. But that's my idea there. So, like I said, I don't know if it's a good idea, but I feel like it fits right in with the camp that slashers end up being. And like I said, I didn't want to wait around to like actual Halloween. We cover the Halloween 2018 movie, because that could be a while. So that's my crazy concept there. Got one more little quick hot cake for us. It's been live for a little bit, but I haven't promoted it yet just because I've been fiddling around with it. But we now have a Patreon that you can support us at patreon.com/TheMadPancaker. Right now we just have, I think it's a $2 tier where it's just like a tip jar, but we might expand some of that a little bit. Like I said, we might begin into, maybe we might have exclusive polls for like, you guys can vote on what we cover in the future type deal. But for now, just keeping it simply as a way for all of you to help us make this low budget podcast a little bit less low of a budget. And of course, follow us on social media. I'm the Mad Pancaker on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So get all those subscribes and stuff out of the way early. And now we can move on to our feature film here. So today we are discussing the 1972 film Tales from the Crypt. Not to be confused with the Tales from the Crypt HBO series that had come out in the late 80s, early 90s era. I think early 90s. But it is influenced by the same material as that show.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a British production. I believe a company named Metro Media Producers Corporation presents it. There's some other distributor, producer, or whatever, but I didn't bother to write them down. It's not that important for this one.
I mean, important is Amicus Productions.
Yeah, Amicus Productions. That was the other one. I didn't bother to write it down because I didn't know who was more involved, because they have Metro Media is like the big one that they have the logo come up with, I think, at the beginning.
Yeah.
So this film is directed by Freddie Francis, and he's directed some other British horror stuff as well. And I believe he actually went on to direct a couple of the episodes of the HBO series as well. So nice little comeback around there.
He's also, besides a director, he's a cinematographer, and he's done some good stuff. The Elephant Man, the original Dune, or David Lynch's Dune, 1984.
I did read that.
Glory, some other good stuff.
Yep, pretty experienced. I mean, not kind of like a big name, like, I don't think anybody's run out there and like if you say Freddie Francis, they're going to know who you're talking about. But yeah, he's been in the business a while and he knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so this film stars Joanne Collins of Dynasty fame.
Her name's...
I've never seen Dynasty, but that's...
Pretty sure her name is just Joan.
Joan? Oh, did I fuck up another name?
I think it's Joanne.
Oh, you know what? I'm confused her with her character, because her character is Joanne in the scene.
Of course, I could be wrong. What do I know?
You're probably right. It's probably Joan. Her character's... The stupid thing is her character's name in this is Joanne. 100%. It's Joann, but her name is Joan, so I get confused on this real easily. And like I said, not a fan of Dynasty. Was it, in my wheelhouse, a little before my time. I mean, I grew up in the era of Dynasty, but, as a little kid, that's not what little kids are running out to watch. Although I was watching this as a little kid. This is one of the films I saw when I was a little kid. I don't think we ever covered the fact that I've been watching horror movies for quite a long time, and not that I'm a horror expert or anything. I'm knowledgeable about horror, and I have a passion for it, but my main claim to fame and why you should probably listen to us talk about horror is I've been watching horror movies since I've been 2 years old.
I watched horror movies young. I had some pretty bad experience watching Child's Play, having nightmares of Chucky, and then my oldest brother holding my eyes open to watch some of the Friday the 13th movies.
That's kind of funny. I never had nightmares from these things. That never bothered me.
I think you invigorated my passion years ago for horror movies.
Yeah, once we started watching some schlock and whatnot, it kind of became a tradition. Also in this film, another big name here, we got Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing. I love that guy.
Guy who blew up all around.
Yeah, shows no mercy.
But I love Peter Cushing. He's an excellent actor, of course. So we got Ian Hendry, who was in The Avengers. Not the
Iron Man?
Yeah, he was Iron Man. No, so there's a British TV show. I know about it. I've never seen it, but I know what it is. I think it's like a spy show type thing. Yeah. Almost like a Mission Impossible.
I think
like the old Mission Impossible and all those other old school spy shows from that era. I think it was around that time too.
I think they remade it a movie in somewhere in the mid-90s or something.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think they did. And then we got Robin Phillips, Richard Green, Nigel Patrick, Patrick McGee, and they've all been in a few things here and there. Mostly British stuff because this is a British film. I forget which one. I think maybe Patrick McGee worked with Kubrick a little bit and was like in Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, he was in a...
Was that him? And another one of his films. I forget which one when I was reading about it.
Barry Lyndon.
Okay. You got any other details about these guys?
No.
And gals?
Not too much, no.
And there's a few others too, but those are the big ones. We'll dive into the plot here. So the film opens with Bach's infamous, and excuse me if I butcher this, I'm not a music guy. I'm familiar with the musical score, but the toccata and fugue in D minor, which I don't know if did I pronounce the toccata right?
It sounds good to me.
Okay. I know you have some more musical experience than me, and so specifically BWV 565, because I guess there's another toccata and fugue in D minor from Bach. That's not quite the same one, but it's like a different number. I learned too much trying to look up this song to know the name of it.
I think all the music in this film, I'm pretty sure, is all classical.
Yeah, it's all done with classical instruments as well.
Yeah. And
of course, for those who have no idea what I'm talking about, it's the infamous, I think Dracula even used it, the that song there. And so that's playing, as we pan around the cemetery while the credits are being played. And the song is overused in a lot of things. It's a go-to like horror motif.
But this could have been...
Yeah, this is still early on.
Maybe, 1972.
Yeah.
I'm sure
like
it was used before.
Yeah, I think it was used way back in Universal Horror heyday.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think it's in Dracula. It's been a while since I watched it, but
to me, it works.
Oh, no, it's overused in a lot of stuff, but it's very effective in this film. And as the credits are rolling, somebody locks the gate in the cemetery. And I think it might be the Crypt Keeper because they're kind of in robes. So he's kind of locking in the people inside this cemetery. So we got these people and they're on this guided tour of these catacombs. And this is where we meet our 5 stars. Mm-hmm. And the tour guide's going around, showing them the crypts and the catacombs. He's talking about some claptrap about Henry VIII. I don't know, something about, Henry VIII. I think he was kind of like going on a purge of the church. I forget my history there, but when he created his own church so that way he could get divorced. That was Henry VIII, right? The guy with all the wives?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, he's like, I want a divorce. Well, you can't. Well, I'll just make my own religion. Fuck you guys. As the tour guide kind of moves on, the 5 linger for a moment, and then they start to move on to follow the group. So the lady of the group, Joan Collins here, her character's name, Joanne, she drops a brooch. And my moral of this story is here, just don't wear fucking jewelry. This whole entire movie could have been avoided if they didn't drop their piece of jewelry.
Yeah.
So they stop and pick it up, but obviously the rest of the group has moved on. So now they're lost. And there's 2 paths. And it's funny because the one guy says, well, it's a toss-up. So they got a 50-50 shot of being right. So they go the one way. It's a dead end. But as they linger there, Stone Passage opens and the 5 enter. And the score gets real creepy here. And another good film with another good classical score here. Really enhances the mood and the ambiance. So the 5 enter the stone room, and there's 5 stone seats for them to sit on. There's like a little bench in front of that. And then there's a stone throne in front of a skull that's been carved into the stone. Pretty sweet looking there.
Yeah, it was pretty sweet.
Nice looking set piece. As they wander in, the door closes behind them. And they kind of turn around. And then the Crypt Keeper... Well, he's never actually called the Crypt Keeper, but this is who he is in this. Obviously looks nothing like, the reimagining of the Crypt Keeper in the HBO series where he's like a skeleton ghoul.
He looks more like a monk.
Which is kind of more how he was portrayed in the actual EC comics.
Yeah.
Oh, and that was another thing. So this film is based on the old EC comics or Entertainment Comics produced by William Gaines and a few others. William Gaines is the big one. Bill Gaines, as he's also called. So it takes a little bit from a lot of the Entertainment Comics series. Even the TV show used not just exclusively Tales from the Crypt stories, but Vault of Horror, Tales of Suspense, a few others. So the Crypt Keeper's there, and he tells them that there's no way out. And they start to ask him questions, and he responds, all in good time. They're all kind of like panicking and freaking out. He's like, but I'm in a hurry. The Crypt Keeper, he's like, I assure you, I have a purpose. Man, does my Crypt Keeper impression just sound like my bad Donald Pleasance impression?
Slight variation, yeah.
It's like just my British person impression.
I mean, they're both British, but yeah.
So he asked the lady, Joanne, why did you come in here? And she's like, I don't know, I was just driving by. Something made me. He asked her, what are your plans when you leave? Plans? And we immediately cut to our first segment number 1. And all through the house. So this is from the Vault of Horror number 35 is the story it's based on. And it was also done in the HBO series as well. It's one of the first season's episodes. Mm-hmm. So it's Christmas time, of course. Yay. And we pan around the room and it's all decorated with Christmas decorations. And the lady, who we know to be Joanne, tends to the fire with a poker. And I can't help but notice this bug-eyed, creepy-looking frog doll there. And I didn't notice.
I think I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't notice the first time, but there's like another creepy doll behind it that's like this hippie with this weird looking big nose and long bow legs.
Yeah, I saw both of those, yeah.
And I really dig the old school TV that's in here. Those old the old boob tubes with the cathode ray tubes, especially the ones that are like encased in wood.
Yeah, yeah.
Good old throwback there. Younger people in this audience probably have no idea what the hell we're talking about, but I'm sure it's on Google. Google it, people. And this late middle-aged older guy comes in with presents, and he's wearing a Christmas fez. And I'm like, apparently Christmas fezzes are a thing? Is that like a British thing?
I don't know.
If anybody's
What is it?
listening from the United Kingdom, let us know. Is that a British tradition? It zooms in on the card he has for his wife's gift. He's narrating the writing on the card. To the best wife in the world, Joanne from Richard. Like, think you don't know your wife too well here, buddy. But so he puts the gifts under the tree.
I think he says like with love or something.
Yeah, with love. I just wrote down.
No, but it's not written on the card.
Right.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah, because it's got the X's and O's. So,
yeah, I think
so. That's like.
Yeah.
So he puts the gifts under the tree, sits down on this couch to enjoy a nice good cigar, paper, and some brandy. So we see on the newspaper that says the Burley Observer, and that's the town where they're at, and that's going to be important later. As he's reading the newspaper, and we got this cool shot where you just see, him sitting there with the paper in front of him, so you don't see his face, and you hear a whack, and then blood just sprays on the paper, so you kind of see the red through the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I got this in my notes here, because on this newspaper, I can't help but notice a picture of a guy on here, and I can't help but think that he has a better mustache than Scary Perry.
Oh my god.
Let us know if you think the man on the newspaper has a better mustache than Scary Perry. So he starts like trembling and shaking, and then he just falls over dead. And you see Joanne behind him with the fire poker.
So
and she's wearing a Christmas fez. So I'm like, what the fuck is up with all these Christmas fezzes? Come on, people in Britain, let me know.
in some versions it's a fire poker, and in some versions it's like a sword.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I think I've only ever seen it as a fire poker, though.
Yeah. I don't. Maybe it's just it looks like a sword. I don't know.
I think the fire poker would make more sense.
It definitely makes more sense
Because you see her tending the fire, so.
I don't know. She got weird dolls on the wall and stuff.
Right.
Have the sword.
Whereas a sword, it's like, where the fuck did they get a sword? And like, why isn't his head just like got a giant, slice in it? I'm not saying it would cut all the way through on like a first swing or something, but there'd definitely be a wound rather than with a poker you just hit it and it's, blunt force trauma and there's blood from that. So she says to him after he's dead, Merry Christmas. And I'm like, best wife in the world, my ass. She grabs the keys out of his pocket and she goes check this safe that's behind a portrait here. So she's checking out the life insurance policy. So, she's going to collect on this big old life insurance policy here. And she hears her daughter call out for her and she wipes off the poker and puts it back. And she burns some paper towels that she used to wipe off it. Got to destroy that evidence.
Yep.
She goes to see her daughter and she asks if, did Santa come yet? And, tells her no, not yet. Gotta go to sleep. So he puts her back to bed and she's like, good night, mommy. Night, daddy. Daddy doesn't answer back, of course, because poor daddy's dead. Poor little girl. So Joanne here, she hesitates for a moment outside the girl's room. Maybe thinking about her actions there a bit, but too late now. She did the deed. She's got to go through with it. She goes back downstairs and she opens up, the present, because why not at this point? And it's the brooch.
Bump.
Moral of the story, like I said, don't fucking wear jewelry. So she tosses the wrapping in the fire for whatever reason, and she starts to drag the body to the basement. But the radio is playing, and it's playing Christmas music. The news cuts in with a report that a homicidal maniac has escaped. And he's bald, wearing the Santa outfit that he took from a shop in Burley. Clever little camera pans over here to the blood-soaked Burley Observer and zooms in on those letters there. Mm-hmm. So that lets us know, hey, the killer's on the loose in this area. This fact is not lost on Joanne as she hears this, and she goes and locks the doors. And Jesus Christ, how many fucking deadbolts are on this fucking door that they have? 2 is like usually good enough, but there's like 3 or 4 on here.
I don't know.
They must be in like a high break-in. It must be all the homicidal maniacs that break out all the time. So
really don't live in Burley.
Yeah, must be a rough part of Great Britain over there. So outside, we got a man wearing a Santa outfit. And he's ringing a bell as he approaches the front door. So he knocks on the door, and he tries the knob, but of course the door's locked. So Joanne goes to look at the window, and then ducks away and hides before the maniac looks in the window. So he leaves. Joanne, so she looks around, and she looks at this phone. And this phone, I call it the dildo phone, because it looks like a dildo. It's like, so it's a rotary phone too, so it's got the rotary on the base of the phone underneath it, and then like you talk into the dildo part, and it just brings a whole new meaning to phone sex there.
It was hip. It was like those dolls.
It was the 70s, man. It was definitely looks like something straight out of the 70s for sure.
That house was hip.
It was. Nice house, too. Pretty well decorated. They're doing well for themselves.
Yep.
Don't know why she had to go and off her husband just to get more money from a life insurance policy. Now, see, in the HBO series, she's also hooking up with her lover on the side. this one glosses over that because they only got 90 minutes to tell 5 stories, so the pace for these is a little quicker than an HBO episode, but it still works. They still capture the essence of these pretty well.
Yes, it is.
So she slides down so she can crawl underneath the windows without being seen across to the phone. So she starts to dial, but, we pan over to her husband's dead body there, and she's like, well, this might not be the best idea, so she stops. So the killer comes, and he looks through the window and leaves again. So she runs to the back door, and she locks it just in the nick of time here. As the killer reaches through, they got like this gate on the back door too. It's like a gated door and then the regular door. So he's kind of reaching his hands in there to try to get at her.
Is the one with that's like behind the beads, or is that the front door?
That's the front door.
Okay.
That comes up later, yeah. Yeah, it's the back door. She starts to shutter all the windows, and there's one stuck, so she has to run and grab the poker to try and close the latch on it. And it's funny because the killer peeks in as she's doing this, and then then she comes back and locks it so you can't see. So now with the house secured, it's time to get back to setting up this murder, making it look like an accident. She drags him, before I get onto this, so one thing about this segment, I feel it really enhances some of the suspense here, is just the silence of it. There isn't a lot of talking going on in this. It's just, the Christmas music's playing on the radio in the background, and you just kind of get to enjoy the silence of this whole situation. That kind of adds to the suspense a little bit. Is the killer going to get in the house? It works very well. This segment, very effective without a lot of talking going on.
Actually, so just to go to some trivia right here. Joan Collins, she's the top billed person of the movie. She actually only has 15 lines in this movie with this segment and the Crypt stuff, but sometimes, like you said, silence is golden.
Yeah, I mean, she does a real good way of conveying the fear with her facial expressions and whatnot. She did a very good job. Where was I? Oh, so she's dragging this body back down to the basement, and she rolls him down the stairs to make it look like he fell down them, make it look like an accident. But the blood. So she goes.
Hold you a second. All right, when this happened, I thought this might have been like a real actor or stuntman. This is crazy. The landing just takes out like part of the.
Yeah, he hits part of the stair railing or something.
The railing, yeah, and then just lands, and I'm like, I wonder if this is a doll, or is this the actual actor, or is it a stunt?
I'm not sure.
Because I mean, the fall was like almost like perfect. It was.
Yeah, they also could have because I think it cuts in between like him initially rolling down the stairs and then hitting the ground. So depending on how they cut it, at certain points they could have done part of the roll, so it it looks better that way. I'm not sure how they did it, but
yeah.
If it was just a stuntman or like half stuntman and then half fake body. So yeah, the blood. So she needs blood to, make it look good. So she takes a glass and scoops up some blood, or more accurately, some red paint from the paper, and goes downstairs and dumps it on the ground of the basement by his head.
So what's funny about this is I watched this like a few months ago on AMC, and just in this segment, I noticed the blood is really pink. It almost looked like...
Yeah, it's a very bright red.
Pink, like nail polish or something. But when I recently watched this, I used Tubi when I watched this. I was going to use my DVD, but damn, PS4 wasn't working. But on Tubi, though, it looked more red than I remembered. So
yeah, it's still very bright, though. It's not actually legitimate blood-colored. It's kind of like similar to some Italian horror films, but I also feel like I don't mind, the obvious red paint blood, because sometimes especially with the old Technicolor pictures, that the blood really pops then, so it adds to the visual element, even though it's not realistic looking blood. Especially true for like a film like Suspiria. So she dumps the blood down there, and she goes and washes the glass, gotta keep cleaning up that evidence. And she starts scrubbing the rug, and she burns...
the shag rug.
Yep, the good old shag rug. You're in the 70s when you got a shag rug.
A white shag rug.
Yeah, I feel like she didn't think that out too much with the blood on the carpet.
I don't know.
And
she had some bleach on it. I don't know.
I feel like at that point you should just get rid of the rug.
Throw it in the fire. You like to throw everything
Yeah,
in
exactly,
the
because that's what she does. She throws the burly observer into the fire, and she takes the life insurance policy and puts it back in the safe because, she doesn't want anybody knowing she was looking at that. We pan across the living room, and we see that creepy frog again with his eyes wide open. The creepy frog saw everything, lady. You gotta throw him into the fire. Kind of reminds me a little bit of there's this, puppet that comes alive in Dead Time Stories, but... that's for another episode.
It actually reminded me of a movie that me and you saw recently with the creepy toad, Kathy's Curse.
Oh, yeah. That creepy looking toad.
We'll review that movie
Oh,
at a
yeah.
later date.
We got a lot of films to review at a later date. She grabs that dildo phone to call the police. Or maybe she just wants to get her jollies off. I'm not sure, Job well done. Time to get my jollies off.
Well, maybe.
So she sees the keys on the table, though, and notices that the daughter's room door is open. And she obviously wanted to see Santa. So she run upstairs, and her daughter's name is Carol, so she's calling out her name, but she's not in there. She's running back and forth, looking for her upstairs. So eventually she runs back downstairs. And this is where that weird bead doorway curtain is.
Yeah.
And a hand reaches out and rings a bell. And Carol pokes her head out, and she's like, "He's here, Mommy. I let him in."
Mommy, Santa's here. He's here, Mommy.
So we got Santa. He comes out, stretching out his hands towards her, kind of like a Frankenstein monster. And so she runs to the fireplace to go for the poker, but the maniac catches up to her and starts to strangle her. And I see that the Santa killer here went to the Michael Myers School of Serial Killing, because he went for the strangulation first. So, and we cut back to that dildo phone because they really want you to remember that. And so obviously she's kind of like moaning because she's getting strangled, but I'm just like, man, was there really a phone sex thing going on here? And then we cut away back to the connecting segment.
The Crypt.
And give a brief conclusion of this segment. So overall, this is a good example of the brilliance of keeping it simple. It's not very complex. I am familiar with the HBO version, which, like I said, it has a little more backstory going on. There's a lover that, she's meeting up with, and different ways she's trying to dispose of the body. And that one, I think she's trying to dump it down a well or something stupid like that. So she actually has to go outside and encounters the killer a little more that way. But it's still very good. It's quick-paced, which is very effective. And like I said, I love the silent night aspect of it there. Pun intended. And I'll still give an overall grade for the whole movie at the end, but I'll also give grades for each segment. So overall, I give this segment 5 pancakes. And this has a problem a lot of anthologies do, is they put the best segment up front. Not unusual. There's other anthologies I've watched that do that, because, they want to grab you in and keep you focused with the best segment. I think it's the best segment.
I disagree.
All right.
But, yeah.
I don't think there's a bad segment in this, but I think this is the best segment.
I hear you.
Mainly, I also really like this story. I like the Tales from the Crypt episode. I like the original from this one. Do you have a rating for this one, or do you have...
Yeah, I do.
Sure, go ahead.
I thought Joan Collins was excellent without having, to act without, dialogue. Just, her mannerisms, and it just seemed well composed. And I like how it was put together, and it always kept your interest. I didn't think you'd ever wane. For this segment, I'd give it 5 cannolis out of 5.
Cool. So like I said, now we cut back to the connecting segment in the catacombs. So we're back to the Crypt Keeper. She says it's nonsense, but she kind of trails off as the Keeper interrupts her. Kind of like knowing, like, well, maybe it's not so much nonsense. Like, she kind of has memories of that. The next guy, he's complaining that he's on his way home to see his wife and kids. And the Crypt Keeper just asks him, "And then?" And he's like, "Hmm?" And then the Crypt Keeper repeats himself, "And then?" And all these are like, just kind of like sits there on the actors for a little bit before like just instantly cutting. There's no like fading out or anything. It just straight cuts into the segment. And so we have segment number 2, Reflection of Death. So this is a Tales from the Crypt story. It's from Tales from the Crypt number 23. I do need to pick up those sometimes. I really want the collection.
Yeah, I'd like to get a
Be
on the
fun to read.
on the bus. Excuse me.
Yep.
Or graphic novel.
Yeah. So we got this guy. He's getting ready to go out on his trip. So, and his wife's kind of complaining to him. He's like, "Must you go tonight?" And he's like, "No, I can't wait." And she's like, "When will you be back?" "I don't know. I'll phone you." He goes to kiss the sleeping kids goodnight, and one wakes up and tells him, "Good night, Daddy." And he kind of hesitates, and he's like, "Good night, darling." And I'm not gonna lie here, I'm pretty sure Daddy is going out for a pack of smokes here. Ba-dum-ching. He kisses his wife goodbye, and she tells him to drive carefully. Bit of foreshadowing, maybe? We cut to the door as he gets in his car to leave, and zooms in on the door, the nameplate there, because this will be important later. Mr. and Mrs. Maitland. I'm like, wait, I thought I was watching Tales from the Crypt, not Beetlejuice.
Or Victor Maitland from Beverly Hills Cop.
Man, that must be a really common name, the Maitlands. So, this guy wishes the worst of his troubles was going to be Beetlejuice. So he drives over to his mistress's apartment. Her name's Susan Blake, and see that name on her apartment door too. Mm-hmm. So they're running away together. Like I said, Daddy's going out for some smokes and never coming back here. So the apartment is empty because they've already packed everything up and sent it to wherever they're going. Just her bags are there. So I'm thinking, like, I'm looking at these ladies here. So this guy is leaving one chick who is out of his league for another chick that is out of his league. I'm just like,
He must have money.
I'm like,
He had like,
what
he had like
fuck? I'm like,
male pattern baldness
I'm like,
going on.
I'd gladly be married to either one of these dames. And it's just like, they embrace, and they both remark that they have to give up quite a bit. I'm like, yeah, you're giving up your other, like, 8 or so wife for another 8 or so woman. I'm like, what the fuck's wrong with you, buddy? He wants his cake and he wants to eat it too, apparently.
Yep.
They're driving now in the car, and they're chit-chatting about the decision, and, you know, she's like, it'll be worth it, won't it? He's driving, he's a little tired, so she's like, well, let me drive. So they pull over, they change spots. So she's driving, and he's sleeping, and he's having a nightmare, he's calling out, no, no, and then he yells, no! And he wakes up, and he's just like, sorry, bad dream. And then all of a sudden, a car just comes out of nowhere, and I'm thinking, I'm like, is this the cop that hit Ben Tramer? Because it just comes out of nowhere. Oh, poor Ben Tramer. And he's like, look out! So he grabs the wheel, and they swerve, and they go off the road through a railing, and this car's tumbling over this forested slope. I'm just thinking to myself, typical female driver. I'm just kidding, ladies.
Wow.
Oh, that's something that people say.
No,
you know?
I'm
So,
saying that, yeah.
it's just a joke. Don't take
I
it
hear you.
seriously,
I
ladies.
gotcha. I get it.
So the car, we cut to it, and it's engulfed in flames. And the guy, his name's Carl, by the way. So he's free of the wreckage, and he's calling out to Susan, but there's no response. And this entire segment from now on is going to be a POV shot, and we don't get to see him until the end. So we're kind of kept in the dark, but you kind of see it coming. And we kind of see his wrists are like bloody red on the side. They're like flush as he's touching things. He's approaching this hobo that's under an overpass, sitting in front of a fire, and this hobo, he turns and looks at Carl here, and he gasps and then just runs away. And now he's going to go underground and live instead of up top. And then the Chuds are going to come after him.
The Chuds?
I can't help but feel I lost another bum fighter to the Chuds.
The Chuds of Britain.
Chuds are killing all my bum fighters. I'm the bum fight
They
king.
credited him at the hobo as a tramp.
Yeah, that's accurate.
I guess
that's a term,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
that gets thrown around.
yeah.
So he's trying to hitchhike next, and a driver yells at him for kind of being on the road.
You got like, wait, this road is. He just like walks right into the middle of the road. He's like,
But he looks at Carl, and he looks shocked, and he just kind of speeds away. He's like, no way, I'm not fucking picking up this guy. Next, he goes home, and he sees a new car in the driveway, and he knocks on the door, and the wife answers, and he's like, darling. And she screams, and she slams the door, and she's like, why should he recognize me? And so he goes to ring the doorbell, but he stops, because now the name says Wilson on the nameplate instead of Maitland. I can't help but feel it's like, it doesn't say the Deets. No? Ba-dum-ching. You don't like these Beetlejuice jokes? Well, go fuck yourself.
you first.
All right. So now he goes and looks through the window, and she sees that this guy has a new bow. And I can't help but feel like this guy's punching above his weight class, too. So finally, he goes back to Susan's apartment, and her nameplate is still on the door. So he rings the bell. So she's still there, and she answers yes, and he calls out to her, it's me, Carl. And the build up of the score here is pretty solid. She's like, it can't be. What do you mean? Where have you been? And she wants him to go away. He turns on the light. All the furniture is back. And she brought it back after the crash. You see her. She can't see Carl at all. She's blind at this point because she is blinded by the crash. She remarks that he was killed in the crash. Bum, bum, bum. And I can't help but feel that another bum, bum, bum in this scene is that she left her cupboard wide open. I just noticed that in the background. I'm like, man, the fucking blind lady just leaves all of her shit lying around, leaves her cupboard open. She could run into that. And so 2 years ago is how long ago the crash was. So he's looking at the pictures of them because she's got a picture of her and a picture of him on her glass end table there. And it's one of those mirror glass tables. So as the camera pans over, you see his reflection and he's dead. And he's got some good looking makeup effects on him. Makes him kind of look like this bluish zombie. Looks pretty good. And then he screams, horrified at his image. But he wakes up in the car. It was the nightmare that he was having earlier. So it was just a dream. Or was it? Then the crash starts to happen again. Fucking cop who hit Ben Tramer comes out of nowhere. And, they swerve off the road. They go tumbling over the forested slope. So it all happens all over again. Or as I like to say, the nightmare becomes reality. And I think that's actually going to be the spoiler for this episode to open it. So if you know what that reference is from, let me know. Do you get the reference, Scary Perry? The nightmare becomes reality.
Something to do with Nightmare on Elm Street?
Not at all.
Okay.
I'll fill you in later. Overall, this is a fine little segment. I don't think it's as good as as suspenseful as the first. It's kind of a predictable ending, but still very effective, especially with the visual reveal at the end. Good makeup on the effect, too. And the other moral for this story is, don't go out for smokes and ditch your family, you scumbags. So for this one, like I said, a solid segment. I give it 3 pancakes.
For me, I thought this was... So, I'm actually going to rank them. I just want to go back. I thought in All Through the House, that one, I'd rank that as the third best one. Or the third. Now, this one I'd put in the 4th position. Like, it was okay.
It's just okay.
It's okay. I mean, there's good stuff. I mean, I like the cinematography of the point of view. Cinematography.
Yeah, it's building the suspense.
Yeah, it was suspense. So I don't think it's horrible. I just think it's okay. I give it a 3.5 out of 5 cannolis. And maybe it could go down to a 3.
I don't think I gave anything a half. I think I just kept them as wholes for this. Just it was easier that way.
Yeah, okay.
So we cut back to the chamber. And the Crypt Keeper remarks, so that is why you were in a hurry. To leave your wife and children? And he's like, who are you? Crypt Keeper remarks, I assure you I have a purpose. And I love this classical acting here from the Crypt Keeper. It's very, very solid. It genuinely comes across as creepy, too. Like this ominous figure that you don't know exactly what's going on with him as he's kind of telling you these stories, so to speak. So the next guy up, I believe this is the guy played by Robin Phillips. And he's just like, what kind of game are you getting at? Crypt Keeper is like, to show you something that you're capable of doing. And Robin Phillips is just like, I don't want to know. Crypt Keeper is saying, but you must know. You must. So now we got kind of like a little cool score going on here too. I didn't write down exactly what these things sounded like. I just remarked when they were cool.
Yeah.
I feel like the classical score does this film very well. So we got segment number 3, Poetic Justice, which is from the Haunt of Fear number 12. So we open with a bunch of kids, and they're making some noise outside in a house across the street. We cut inside to these douchebags McMansion here, and James Elliott, that's the guy Robin Phillips is playing, and he's pacing around. And the noise is coming from the neighborhood kids who are visiting Mr. Grimsdyke, played by none other than Peter Cushing. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of an unusual role for him. I mean, not that he's always played a good guy, because obviously he's played Van Helsing, which is a good guy, but this is more a lighthearted role for him. Got anything about that?
Oh, so actually, I would like to do.
Oh, you want to do it later? You want to talk about Cushing in this later? Okay.
At the end.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Not a problem. I know there's some trivia about it. That's why.
Yeah.
I didn't want to step on your toes there.
Yeah. No, you're not.
All right.
Keep going, bud.
So. And he's putting on this puppet show for the little kids. He gives them some toys, and he finds these toys, and he takes them, he cleans them up, and he repairs them, and then he gives them out to these kids. And he's remarking about his wife who has passed away. He's got this pen full of friendly dogs outside. They're kind of barking too, making a noise, but they're all, cute little puppers. So he entertains the kids, and he's telling them rhymes and stories and that sort of stuff. And so we cut back into the mansion, and James's father, Edward, comes in to the room and asks what he's looking at. And he just remarks that he's looking at Grimsdyke, of course. That Grimsdyke. He's doing his usual shell out to the kids, and he does it every year on his birthday. He doesn't understand why how his father can stand it, and, talks that he's a rubbish collector and a dustman, and that the place is kind of an eyesore to the neighborhood. James is like, why won't this guy just sell out? And his father's made him offers in the past, he remarks. But Grimsdyke won't do it, because he's sentimental about the old dump, as he calls it, because Grimsdyke and his wife lived there their entire marriage. Now that she's passed on, he wants to spend the rest of his days there and pass away there, because that's where all his memories are at. Yeah, so like I said, he was talking about the place is rubbish, a pigsty, and it depreciates our property value, so he's kind of one of those douchebags. Not that I don't have some neighbors that are probably bringing down our property values. Cough, cough.
Sorry about me? What?
No.
Oh, about you.
No. And the father just remarks that there's nothing we can do. So they're looking out the window and watching the kids leave. And as they're walking past, the other neighbor kind of notices this guy's prize roses, his rose bushes in his garden. And James Elliott is just like, isn't there? He's scheming something up. So we cut to night, and James is outside in the neighbor's yard. Not Grimsdyke yard, but the neighbor who, his name's Mr. Baker, not that that's important. So he's digging up his neighbor's garden. So he goes back inside his mansion, and he enters the room carrying a rose in one hand, smelling it with the pitchfork in the other hand, and he's got mud on his boots. And the police come the next day, and Mr. Baker thinks that Grimsdyke's dogs got out and went on a rampage through his garden. You know, what else could it be? They take the dogs away from him, and Peter Cushing, he looks so heartbroken here, and he's like, you can't take them away. They're my friends. But the police have a court order, and besides, he doesn't have licenses for the dogs. Just like darn government overreach, always with their licenses for things. Cushing is heartbroken, like I said. He gives off a very, you feel for the guy here. It's very sad to watch. Next, we cut to him, and he's using a Ouija board here, or a Ouija board.
A yes board?
Yes, a yes board, because it's a combination of the French oui and the German ja. So, I mean, it's always been pronounced Ouija, but it should be Ouija or Ouija, but, it's neither here nor there. So he's using this to communicate with his dead wife. And then he also has this weird Ouija chalkboard.
That's like crack going.
Yeah, because he's communicating with her and she's responding, or it's like, are you there? And he's like, yes. And then so he goes to the chalkboard to have her write a message. And all she writes is danger. And he's like, to who? The children? And, she doesn't respond, or it cuts away before she can respond. And I'm like, no, of course to you, dumbass. And
you only get one chalkboard.
You could erase it and then let her write another word.
You only get one.
Or you could point to the letters,
You only get one. No,
I'm just like, man, do you really
what's
want...
it called? I always forget the name. The piece that moves the paddle.
Oh, the
planchette.
The planchette,
yeah,
yes.
The planchette. I don't know.
So I can't help but think, does this guy really want to spend his eternity with someone that provides him with an impossible to interpret warning that gives him no help whatsoever? Oh,
I think he does.
Apparently. So the next day, Elliot's meeting with the local counselor. It's like a local politician. So they want him to fire Grimsdyke from his job. I'm not exactly sure what his job is.
Yeah.
I don't think they reference it, but he must have some sort of county job as like a clerk or something. Well, the equivalent of a county here. I'm not sure how Britain divides up their stuff. So they want him to be fired, but he's only got 2 years from retirement. And James is trying to say he's too old and a younger man could do a better job. The counselor just kind of remarks, but he would lose his retirement fund. But James counters that would save the town some money. And then, of course, the politician is like, money saved, you say? That could go in my own pocket? What? We cut to Grimsdyke. He's walking home. He's a bit downtrodden. And James is watching through his window. And he's like, poor Grimsdyke. I do believe he's out of a job. And, of course, he's smoking a cigarette here. Ah, the 70s. When you could still smoke on film. So Grimsdyke, he's eating dinner, and he hears a dog barking outside. It's one of the puppers! It found its way back home and escaped from the pound. This one's called Jamie. So the Elliots, they invite the children's parents over, and they tell him, that he's a filthy old man, and heaven knows what his motivations are over there having the children over. Trying to imply that he might be doing the bad touch with these kids here. They might need adults. I need an adult. I need an adult. And, of course, these are all, a bunch of bitchy mom-type characters here.
Yeah.
So the parents, they tell their kids they can't see him anymore. So Cushing, he's like, I don't understand why the children haven't stopped in a while. And he's just kind of also sad because he's got nobody to make toys for. James, we cut back to the mansion, so he's like, get just one more turn of the screw and we'll be able to get him to sell. Valentine's Day is coming up. So he's going to send him some Valentines from everyone in town. So we cut to Valentine's Day, and Grimsdyke is getting a bunch of mail from the mailman. So he goes inside, starts reading all the cards. And he reads the first one, and all of these are kind of poems. The first one he reads is kind of insulting, so he's just like perplexed, and he's like, I don't think I like that. So he keeps reading, and they keep getting more and more insulting as he goes along. And by the third or fourth one, the last one, he reads, the poem goes, some people live in the country, some people live in the town. Why don't you do us a service, jump in the river and... ... So obviously, fill in the blank there, drown. So Grimsdyke here, and Cushing, excellent performance here. His lip kind of quivers, and you can see he's kind of coming to tears a little bit. So we cut back to the Elliots, and it's 2 weeks later, I think they remark. Or I think a week later. So they remark that they hear Grimsdyke's dog barking. And they're like, man, this mutt hasn't shut up for a week. And they also notice that they haven't seen him since Valentine's Day. So they go over to the place, and they can't help but notice that, place isn't actually a pigsty. It's pretty clean on the inside.
It's funny when they go in there, though. There's no dog in there. There's no bark.
Oh, yeah, so who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe there's a deleted scene where when they should have cut to the dog running out the door or something
They
like
run
that.
a budget for the dog.
Yeah, they had to return all the dogs, and all they could afford was the barking now. And yeah, they're like, I thought this place was supposed to be filthy. So, and pans over and they find a bunch of books about the occult sitting on his table. Suspicious. Then they go and open the door, and it's Grimsdyke's work area for his little workroom for fixing up toys and whatnot. So we see a chair kicked over, of course, and Grimsdyke's hanging there from the ceiling. Poor Peter Cushing. If he's not getting blown up in a Death Star, he's hanging from a ceiling. At the funeral, Old Man Elliot covered the expenses, and he remarks, I believe it's the counselor from earlier that actually told him it was generous of him to do that. He's like, it's the least I could do. He was a neighbor. And I'm just like, well, that problem solved. Everything worked out. But next year, it's Valentine's Day again, and James finds the leftover cards in the desk drawer, so he goes and burns them. We cut to the cemetery, and we see Grimsdyke's grave, his tombstone there. And we cut back to James, and he's kind of pacing around, and he looks kind of nervous. So we cut back to the cemetery, and then a grave rises out of the earth. So Old Man Elliot, back at the mansion, he remarks he's going off to bed. And we cut back, and now Zombie Cushing kind of fully emerges from the ground here. You see him from the waist up. He looks pretty cool. And back at the Elliots, James, he's right at that desk as Grimsdyke creeps in and approaches. And he doesn't even notice him until he lays his hand on the desk right next to a little model or statue of a hand that's on the desk. So I don't know, maybe he's an artist and he uses this draw hands. I don't know.
There's some paperweight or something.
Right. And so he looks up and sees the creepy zombie Peter Cushing, and he screams. So the next day, the father enters the room, and he just sees James lying dead at the desk. And he finds a note written in blood, and it says, Happy Valentine's Day. You were mean and cruel right from the start. Now you really have no... He unwraps the paper to reveal James's still beating heart ripped from his chest. Overall, I think this is a fun little tale of the typical douchebag getting their comeuppance, which is a common theme of the Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, entertainment comics in general. Mm-hmm. The zombie makeup is pretty cool. And this story, I mean, they're all pretty quick paced, but this one takes a little bit of time to get there. But I still feel it's probably one of the better segments in it. And Peter Cushing's great as always, so I give this one 4 pancakes.
All right, so I got some trivia on this one about Peter Cushing.
Sure.
So this is going to be a little bit of a spoiler ahead to our next segment, but he was offered the role of the main character of the next segment, but he declined it, and he said he wanted to play Grimsdyke. And that's, like you said, this is not his traditional role. He's usually, more of a bad guy. Mm-hmm. And he actually wanted to do this part so much that he took less money.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, they say when he was acting this thing, that this was actually really Peter Cushing. Like, this is him acting like himself because his wife just passed away, maybe within a year since when this movie began filming. Violet Beck, that was her name. And they say he acted like himself because he's still very emotional about it, and he put it into his acting work. And a lot of people praise this as one of his best performances of acting.
He's an excellent actor in general.
Yeah, he's an excellent actor. So this one, I really like, obviously, I love Peter Cushing in this part. Mm-hmm. There's, I understand it's a little slow. I think I was also finding out his profession, he's a dustman, but I think that means he's a garbage collector.
Oh.
So
that could be.
He's a garbage man. But anyway.
That makes sense, because that would explain how he gets access to the toys rather than just going to the dump. He just finds them as he's taking out the trash.
But I really like this. I like
collecting the trash.
Yeah, I like the way Peter was. I just liked how it progressed. You're the douchebag guy, and then plotting to get him in the Valentine's Day cards, and then the occult touched a little, put a little not scariness in it, but it's a little something different. And then at the end, I thought the heart beating, it was really cool, good effects. So this one, Although this is going to be my second favorite segment, very close to my favorite, I'm still going to give this one 5 cannolis out of 5.
Wow. Man, Perry's just giving out all the cannolis today.
I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, this is a good film.
I mean, this segment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Robin Phillips also does a bang-up job as the as the douchebag. He does it very well.
And then another thing, though, for Robin as James Elliott. So Joanne Clayton had the brooch. He, if you notice, has a red rose on his suit in the and that's considered a heart. So that's kind of
gotcha.
That's kind of cool. But
plus, it could also be like the rose he stole from the garden,
or the rose. Yeah, or the rose.
I forget what color it was. I think it was red.
Yeah.
Wonder if there's some other little things from the other episodes like that in there.
Yeah.
I didn't catch.
I read about that this one, but you know.
All right. And before we come back, we'll take a brief moment for plug some sponsored content here. So we'll be right back with you guys in a few. And we're back. Before we cut into the fourth segment here, so we're back at the Crypt, and Robin Phillips remarks that it's true, I didn't, and then he stops himself there and corrects himself. I don't like Grimsdyke. And he's like, who's next? And apparently it's going to be British Alec Baldwin here. Guy kind of looks like a British Alec Baldwin. Oh, and that's a little topical right now, and that's not meant to be intentional. I think I wrote this before that even happened.
It's Richard Green.
Yes, Richard Green. And he just kind of remarks, like, what am I doing here? And the Crypt Keeper's like, you'll see. So we got segment number 4, Wish You Were Here, just from The Haunt of Fear number 22.
And also the Tale of the Monkey.
Oh, yes. And they reference that in here, so it's kind of like
an
in-universe type thing.
Yes.
So we got Ralph, and he's a businessman, and he's meeting with his lawyer, but he's kind of made some bad investments, and he's lost everything. More than everything. And he was kind of spending money that he didn't belong to him. I don't know where these funds came from, but he had access to them, and he must have spent them all on something. But the gains, he remarks, could have been enormous. So it's one of those, hey, no harm, no foul. If I would have been successful, I would have made so much money I could have paid it all back and had a huge profit. And I can't help but feel like the gains he's talking about, he's like, I feel like this is how this conversation should have went. He's like, but the gains could have been enormous. Just imagine if the Jets win the Super Bowl this year. Because obviously the Jets are doing horrible this year. This is a bit topical or a bit current event-y.
I hate you.
I wrote that joke. I wrote that joke before that game. I'm sorry. Harry's a bit of a Bengals fan, so this is after the Bengals were the first win for the Jets this year.
You mean the refs let the Jets win? All right.
But this ain't a football podcast. This isn't Studs and Scrubs. This is the International House of Horror. So back on track.
All right, I wish you were here.
But I feel like that's like he made some ridiculous like gambling bet that was probably terrible, some sort of long shot. So he's got two options. Bankruptcy is the first option. And he's just like, that's dishonorable. The lawyer remarks that he's been dishonorable before. And he quickly rules out that option. He won't do that. He doesn't really say this is the second option, but I think option number 2 is he'll have to sell his belongings to pay his debts. Just pretty much has to sell everything he owns. He's like, well, I won't do it. I'm like, geez, buddy, you have to do something. Pick one. Either file for bankruptcy or sell your shit. I mean, I don't know what he expects here. So he goes back and talks to his wife. She says they'll have to sell. So she's kind of looking around a room, and she looks at a statue, and she remarks that God from Hong Kong when he is running guns to, and then she just trails off. I'm like, oh, so this guy's a gun runner here, a little bit of a war profiteer. Grant, I don't know who he's running guns to in Hong Kong, considering at the time Hong Kong was still a British holding. I don't know unless it was like during the war or something. Maybe he was running guns, but I don't know who he'd be running guns to. I mean, yeah, the Japanese took over it. It's confusing. Maybe he's running them to the communists in China. I have no idea. Or maybe there was just gangs in China that needed guns. Who knows? So the man who sold it to them said to use it wisely. She wondered what that meant. So after all these years, they finally notice an inscription at the bottom, though. And essentially, the inscription says the statue gives 3 wishes, but the last part of the inscription is kind of scratched out, which is probably just the warning part, about all the bad stuff that happens. But the third line is kind of like a warning in it, too, so I don't know what the fourth line was going to add that was so important. Mm-hmm. And they make the monkey's paw reference. And she wishes for lots of money before he can warn her about the moral of the story. And so they get a phone call here, and it's from lawyer better mustache than Scary Perry.
Right now.
And he tells him he needs to come to the office right now, and it's about money. So he tells her that she has to go see the lawyer. So he gets in his red car, but a man is watching from the trees, and we get a stinger here. So he gets on a motorcycle and starts following him. So he gets closer as Ralph's driving along here. So he finally gets right behind Ralph's car. And Ralph looks in the rearview mirror and he sees a skull face on a motorcyclist. And it's just a mask though. But I don't know if it was intentionally meant to be a mask or if this guy was actually supposed to look like a skeleton, but it was just, a cheap mask.
It's a cheap mask. He's supposed to look like Death.
Well, I get that, but I don't know if this is just supposed to be some random guy wearing a mask, or if it's supposed to be actually Death and just it looks bad because it's a mask.
No, I think it's supposed to look like Death, but it's bad because it's a mask.
Yeah, so it just kind of came up poorly.
They put that in
it's a cool looking mask, but you can clearly see the eye, the flesh around the eyes. So, like I said, I was just wondering, is this guy just trying to scare this guy for some reason and has a mask on? So we cut to the lawyer's office, and he gets a phone call that Ralph, his client, has died in a car accident. And we got a guy calling from a phone booth. The trend is reignited.
Yes.
More phone booths.
We're back on the track.
So he breaks the news to the wife and goes over there and tells her. But she's now rich. Ralph always carried a huge insurance policy, especially for accidents. So she thinks it's because of her wish. So she's going to wish for Ralph back, but ask the lawyer if he ever heard about the monkey's paw. He's like, yes, it's that story where the old couple wished their son back to life. But he came back all mangled and deformed because he was mangled in a machinery accident at his job. So he warns her against wishing him back because of that in the story, that he's going to come back mangled in the car crash. So she's trying to outsmart the statue here. So she wishes that he was back as he was before the accident. And after she makes her wish, they get a knock on the door. And we got some men, probably some undertakers here. They bring in Ralph's coffin. They set it down, and the lawyer tells her not to open it up because he's mangled. And the undertaker tells him he wasn't mangled. He died of a heart attack before the crash, and body was just fine. Just died of the heart attack and, veered off and probably crashed. So the statue got her again because he died right before the accident with the heart attack. So she tells the lawyer to leave. And she's trying to warn her, but she tells her to get out. He goes out. So for her last wish, she's trying to think here. And she's also a bit emotional, too. So she wishes Ralph was alive now and that she doesn't ever want him to die and want him living and breathing. He immediately comes back to life, but he's screaming in agonizing pain. So the lawyer busts back in through the door because he hears the screaming. And he's like, what have you done? She tells him, in response to her telling him this, don't you realize? He's been embalmed. The fluid's burning him from the inside. So he's screaming in agonizing pain. So she grabs a sword from a wall. And so she's trying to kill him. And as she's cutting him up, it reveals some awesome entrails. Plus, they got a severed hand moving. Good old classic effect, just the hand stuck through the fabric there, but still cool looking. But he can't die because she wished that he would live forever. So overall, an okay story. And that's just a retelling of another old story. It's nothing too thrilling, but it does have, like I said, the cool hacking up scene with the entrails and the moving hand, which is nice. It's your typical careful what you wish for story. It doesn't really wow. There's not a whole lot going on, just kind of talking about the business proceedings, and then it just kind of wraps up at the end. But it gets the job done. So overall, I give that one 3 pancakes.
All right, a couple things on this one. So when she wishes him back for the last wish, the thing is, this is all happening concurrently at the same time. So he would never have got embalmed because that's a process. They wouldn't just embalm somebody right after they die.
Well, yeah, they take him to the funeral home and then you get embalmed.
I just think it would take some time, but okay. I mean, it's just...
well, you don't know how much time has passed since the phone call of him receiving news and then going.
There's a passage of time. It all seems...
Well, it just cuts.
I know, I understand. But yeah, that... And also, you'd think, though, when he's in the crypt, that he would be still in agonizing pain, but that's different.
Well, yeah, there's a reason why, and it's coming up.
Yeah, I understand. And then another thing is, I think he should be there, and I think his wife should be there too.
Well, yeah, it does feel like a little more of the wife's story, because he just kind of disappears in the middle of it for part of it. But I understand what they were going for. He was the guy that was the kind of sort of the catalyst of them losing all their money.
To me, this was the weakest of all the 5 tales. I just thought it dragged a little bit. The intestines shot was cool. The skeleton, Death looked pretty cool on the motorcycle.
Yeah, other than you could see his eyes.
But yeah, like you're saying, it's a retelling of a story. So
I do think it's funny, though, that it's a retelling of a story. And
I don't think it was bad. I think there's good acting. I did like the acting of the wife. What's her name here? Excuse me. Barbara Murray as a
Yep, she plays
Anid, I think, or something.
Mhm.
And then Jason. And also glad that Peter Cushing didn't take the part of Ralph here, because I don't think.
Yeah, probably would have been a little bit of a waste of his talent.
Yeah. But that said, though, with Daff and the entrails and stuff, I'm gonna give this 3 cannolis out of 3, even being for the worst one. It's not the worst thing ever.
Yeah, it's still entertaining.
It's watchable,
and it's pretty quick too.
Yeah.
That's the nice thing with all these. They move along pretty quickly.
They like you said, Poetic Justice seems a little long, but this one seems like there's a lot less happening.
Yes, this one moves about quickly.
Yeah, but anyways, back to you.
I do think it's funny that this is a retelling of a story that they all know about, but they still fuck it all up. Instead of learning from the story, they're like, no, we could still beat the monkey's paw. Or the statue in this case.
You can never beat the monkey's paw.
Right. So, back at the crypt, the next guy asks what he has seen. And the keeper, he remarks that, you should be more concerned about what you will see. And he's like, I don't care. I just want to leave. Very well, but you should heed my warning. And then we cut into the segment. So segment number 5, Blind Alleys. So this is from Tales from the Crypt number 46. So this episode, or this segment, the previous segment, and the first segment were adapted into actual HBO episodes of Tales from the Crypt. The other 2 were not, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I've seen the HBO version of this one. I forget how good it is.
So yeah, and All Through the House, Blind Alleys, and Wish You Were Here.
Yep. The Wish You From Here, though, is a little bit different. The other 2 are pretty similar tellings, just expanded a little bit because you got more runtime to work with. So we got Major William Rogers here. He's driving to a home for the blind, Elmridge Home for the Blind to be specific, with his dog Shane. So he's greeted by the staff member as he pulls up and asks, if he's Mr. Rogers, and he corrects him that it's Major Rogers. You can already tell he's a bit of a stickler for the chain of command and addressing by proper rank here. He's shown to his quarters, and it looks kind of bland. There's no pictures on the walls, because the previous guy had bought them himself and took them with him. So he's like, I guess we'll have to go and buy some. And he asks where the men, or the patients, are. Corrects himself. He's told by the staff member that they're at lunch. And he's like, you mean dinner? The budget cuts have already started, but they may come back to cut him. Wink, wink. So he goes to see the blind patients at lunch. And I can't help but think, I'm like, Jesus Christ, these guys have a huge fucking spread. Like, they come back with, like, huge fucking platefuls of food, and you get seconds and everything if you want. I'm like, holy fucking hell. It's like eating at a gourmet restaurant here. Or at least a buffet, a fancy, nice buffet.
Yeah.
I'm like, geez, maybe they do need to cut back the budget a little bit. They're like heaping platefuls. It's not like, I'm like, man, this is better than what I got. Like Wooly said. Wooly's gone apeshit. No Dawn of the Dead reference?
For food?
Yeah, man. Where he's like, shit, man, this is better than what I got. That food they got.
Well, it goes apeshit because it kills people.
You're missing my point here.
All right.
I'm making a kind of a joke that's not getting across. Cut it out.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Who are you?
The major, he's walking around. He speaks up. He introduces himself to them that he's the new superintendent and gives them the brief spiel and says if there's any complaints, he'll be in his office. You can come see him. So he calls to his dog Shane, and it barks, and that kind of startles the blind because it's a loud barking. So back at his office, he's talking to his dog here. He tells him that once they make a few changes, they'll like it quite well here. So we cut to winter, and it's snowing outside. So the head blind guy, I have his name later. I forget what his name is off the top of my head here. Might be George. I think it is George.
Yeah, George.
He's feeling the radiator, and there's no heat coming from it. So he goes to another one, and it's cold too. And you see all these blind guys, they're kind of covered up in bed, shivering with their blankets on them. So there's one guy in bed, and he's not looking so hot. Boom-ching.
My God.
Gotta get in those puns when you can.
Oh, boy.
George, he's kind of like the de facto leader of the blind people here, so he goes to get him an extra blanket, and he's checking the cupboard, and there are none. Does he leave the cupboard open after he leaves?
I don't remember.
I think he might, or at least it just cuts away. I'm like, man, these blind people just leaving all their cupboards open. They're going to get hurt. You got Susan leaving her cupboard open. You got this guy leaving this cupboard open.
You have a fascination with cupboards.
I don't know why I noticed that. I actually just thought of that just now. I'm like, did this guy leave this cupboard open? Are they trying to say something about blind people?
Or cupboards.
Or cupboards? So, yeah, he kind of slams his fist down in anger. So he goes to the major's office. And it's all decked out now. It's got all sorts of frills, nice paintings on the wall, a nice little cozy fire in the fireplace. So George, he goes in, and he's feeling the walls to get his bearings, so he touches the painting that's by the door. And he tells him that the men have sent him to talk about the heating. And, he remarks, it's been cold the last few nights, and he was wondering. And he gets cut off by the major. For reasons of economy, the heating is shut off at 2100 hours. You should all be in bed by then anyways. There's no point in staying up if you can't see anything. I'm just like, man, what a dick. George remarks, there's not enough blankets. And Major responds, he's trying to run this place as efficiently as he can. There's no room in the budget for extra blankets at this time. So the guy kind of remarks,
you do another variation on Donald Pleasant.
Yeah, this is my British accent.
It sounds like Donald Pleasant.
Just my go-to accent. I got two accents. Generic British guy and the late Steve Irwin, Australian. That's about all I can do. My German accent quickly devolves into Steve Irwin for some reason. Oh. So George, he asked the major if he knows anything about the blind people. He's kind of like, no, but I've been in the army 20 years and has learned how to handle all kinds of people. So the guy, and I got his name here, it's George Carter, that's his full name. So he tells them they're not soldiers, and that the loss of one sense has sharpened their others. So they're like Daredevil here. So they feel the cold more, the room's dirty, they feel every speck of dust. They hear bugs run across the floor. So he's like, why can't you sell this painting to get more fuel or blankets? So the major kind of gets shorts with him because, and just tries to end the conversation. He's like, I want to where you are running this administration here. And so George leaves and he slams the door. So we cut to dinner, as I call it, but it's really lunch. And they're complaining about the food that's, tastes like dishwater as they're eating their soup.
It looks like dishwater.
Yeah, it's like dishwater. And the one guy goes for seconds, but the cook tells him, it's like, sorry, the rations have been cut. And George goes to the major's office, and he's sitting there, and he's living up the Ritz here with a fancy steak and some wine, and he just burst in. The major scolded and was like, it's traditional to knock before entering the office. George complains that he gets steak and wine while they have garbage to eat, because, he can just smell the steak and the wine that the major's having. And Major Oso Better Stash and Perry doesn't care. He's the officer in charge. In the kingdom of the blind, even the one-eyed man is king, he remarks. George uses his cane to knock over the bottle of wine, and the major calls to his dog Shane, and he starts barking at him, and the blind back away frightened. So as long as the dog's in the picture, they can't really do nothing about it. Back at the quarters, the guy who was sick from earlier, George gives him his blanket, and he asks him to go fetch a doctor. And so George goes to the major, and the major's just complaining that he woke him up at like 3 a.m. for something. So he tells him that this one patient is very ill, so he's like, oh, very well, we'll go take a look. So Shane barks, and the major tells him to wait, and that he'll be back. And so he goes to the quarters, but Greenwood, as this guy's name is, he's already dead. And the major kind of shows no remorse as he announces this fact, and the rest of the blind all kind of get up and look at him. And this could be the last straw for the blind patients here. So at dinner the next day, the blind are passing around a plate. They're collecting bits of meat from all the blind people. But for what? So George goes and uses the meat to leave a trail of breadcrumbs from the door of the major's office to this room in the basement. So the major returns to his office with Shane on a leash, but he lets go of the leash to unlock his office door. And Shane sees the meat on the ground, just starts sniffing it, starts eating it. So Shane follows the meat trail, and the major enters his office and doesn't notice that Shane is gone immediately. And apparently the meat must be good enough for the dog. He has no complaints about it. No, nothing.
No.
All right. So Shane, he continues down the path to the room in the basement. And when the dog goes into the room, George shuts the door and locks the dog in. Back at the office, Major finally notices that Shane is gone. So he goes to look for him, but the blind block his path. And he's like, what's going on here? And George, he tells him, it's our turn to give the orders, Major. So they take him and they lock him in another room in the basement. So he hears his dog in the other room, and he asks him what they're doing to his dog. Later, the major hears a noise outside, because the blind are now moving around pieces of wood and 2x4s, and they're constructing something. So the staff member goes in to bring the Major his tea in his office and notices that he's missing. So he goes down to the basement to investigate, but he's ambushed by the blind guy who's waiting at the door, and he locks him in a closet.
They like grab him from behind with the cane.
Yeah, and like it's kind of like holding him, restraining him. It's very cool how they do these scenes with like, I feel like the people do a good job acting as blind people. I don't know how many of them were actually blind. I'm sure, I think, is it Patrick McGee plays the head blind guy?
Yeah, George Carter.
Yeah.
He's not.
Yeah, I don't even think he was actually blind, but he does a very good job, just kind of has the dead stare. You never see him, like, accidentally move his eyes in a way like he would see something. So they do a very good job. I like how, like, the one blind guy, they're, like, shakily holding their canes to try to, like, make a pathway to get this guy in the closet.
Yeah.
So George tells the Major that his dog seems to be getting hungry, and the Major begs him to feed him, and he's just like, all in good time. I'm like, man, is this guy the Crypt Keeper? So he says the dog will go wild and berserk. George is just like, I know, and we get an ominous music starts to build. Some more good, effective classical score here. Later on, he wants to know what they're doing, and George just says, you'll see soon enough. I just can't help but find that funny, a visual reference with the, you'll see. So he begs to be fed, or at least to feed his dog, and George says, he'll be fed all right. More foreshadowing there. So the blind finish constructing their contraption, and the door to the Major's cell creaks open. Love creaking doors. I just love it there. Adds to the ambiance and the ominous tone here. He goes out, and the lights are out. So, it's, he's kind of just feeling around in the dark here. He has to feel around this makeshift hallway/tunnel the blind have constructed, and they tease him with another open door with a light coming out of it, and then they close it on him just as he gets close to it. So he continues down the passage, and he's feeling around, and he cuts his hand on the wall. So now, George, he turns on the lights, and you see that this part of the hallway is narrower, and it's lined with razor blades. Mm-hmm. Don't ask me how the blind got the razor blades in there without cutting themselves. Maybe they had gloves on. So now he has to continue down the passageway, and he's trying to feel, the lights are on so he can see. It's very narrow, so he's trying to place his hands so he doesn't fall over into the razor blades and also not touch the razor blades. But he's still getting cut here and there. Finally, he's past it. But the blind opened the dog's door, and he runs out straight at the Major because he's hungry, so he goes to feed off the Major since he's been starved. So the Major tries to run away back to the razor corridor. He kind of hesitates for a moment because it's like, which way do you go? Choose your demon there. Eventually, he charges into the razor corridor, but George shuts off the lights as he's trying to go through the corridor. And all you hear in the darkness is his agonizing screams. Although I think this dog here is a German Shepherd, I doubt a dog would attack its master after just 2 days, because it seems like not much time passes after the 2 days mark. And dogs are pretty loyal animals. I mean, after all, Grimm's dog was there with him for a week and didn't try to nibble on his feet or anything. I mean, but then again, maybe Grimsdyke left out food for the dog. He wasn't a dick. It's like, okay, let me fill up this dish before I go and kick the chair out from under me. But, I mean, it doesn't hurt the story, but I feel like in real life, because I mean, humans can go pretty long without food too. So I know dogs are smaller, but I still feel like they could go a little bit of time before, they just become feral animals. And even then, I'm not sure they would, just because they're pretty loyal to their masters. But I don't know the temperament of German Shepherds. I don't really think they're as vicious as some other species of dog, but I know they are used as a guard dog, so they can kind of be vicious. Still, I don't hold that against it, though. So overall, another solid comeuppance story. Major Rogers is a good portrayal as a remorseless, cold, uncompassionate military man who we want to see get his, and with the perfect build-up of suspense during the construction of the death trap. So I give that one, I don't feel like it's the best segment. It's one of the better segments, probably the second best, between that and Poetic Justice. But overall, I give it 4 pancakes. Very solid, very good story, but it's another solid entry in the anthology.
If the audience is following along with their process of deduction, they'll know that this is my favorite segment.
Shocker.
First of all, I think Patrick McGee as George Carter did an excellent job as acting in this. As you said, his dead stare as a blind person might have. Even just for this whole scene, their wardrobe, and then he had just kind of like this, as it progressed, like this. I don't want to say conniving. I'm looking for like slyness about him, just his look. Like,
yeah, he was clever.
Clever, yeah. clever. Also, yeah, Nigel Patrick as Major William
Yes.
Rogers. He's very, very good bad guy because he's obviously the bad guy in this. I think the other actors were well coordinated with the acting blind, especially like we're saying, like the Canes and stuff. And what I really like is the comeuppings, how they got him in this with this maze. The first time I saw this with this maze, I'm like, this is awesome. I'm like,
Yeah, the maze is cool.
I didn't see this coming. I'm like, wow, like Jigsaw, you got nothing on these guys, even though that would be after. But yeah, so the maze, I just thought it was really neat. And then I like how it narrows and they eventually shut the light on him. And just altogether, I think it was a really good segment. And this one really, it always has my attention, and I'm always looking forward for this. And in this case, I think they saved the best segment for last. So I'm gonna give this 5 cannolis out of 5.
Yeah, it's definitely a good bookend to the anthology. So we cut back to the crypt. So the Major asks, what is all this? And that he was on his way to his new job. And he doesn't know why he stopped here. The Crypt Keeper remarks, I do. Now you may go. So the stone door opens again, and you kind of hear some rumblings and thunder going on. So Ralph goes and he looks first, and he turns back, kind of like shocked and shaken. He's like, where are we? And the Crypt Keeper remarks, a place people go who have not repent. So he wasn't warning them. He was telling them why they are here. And the big reveal, they're in hell. Mm-hmm. So, and as the Crypt Keeper's remarking this, he finishes up, Ralph falls into the fiery pit. And so
another good reason.
This is not the best green screen effect here, but it gets the point across.
Another good...
It might be blue screen, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it's green screen because his tie's blue.
But real quick, yeah, another good reason why I'm glad that Peter Cushing didn't play Ralph, because we would see Peter Cushing fall to the fiery depths for sure.
Yeah, it'd be like Dick Jones falling from a OCP tower. The rest kind of slowly get up as the organ music intensifies and walk toward the door to accept their fate. So now the Keeper, he goes and sits on the throne. And now who's next? Perhaps you? And he looks at the camera. I think he's talking to you there, Scary Perry.
Breaking the fourth wall.
Yep, breaking the fourth wall there. The Bach music starts to play and flames start to rise. You got some awesome looking flames coming from the skeleton's eyes too. And we fade to black and we roll the credits. And so with that, we go on to The Last Bite. This might be a little shorter since we kind of covered each segment a little bit afterwards, but give an overall here. Tales from the Crypt is a solid anthology collection that captures the essence of the comeuppance tales that EC Comics was famous for. While it may be overshadowed by the bigger budget HBO series that came later, of which some of the stories from this were retold in, the film still manages within a 90-minute time frame to deliver 5 good stories. The cast is filled with solid European and British actors and actresses, well known during their time, plus the great Peter Cushing is always a delight, especially playing a lighthearted character that is outside his usual spectrum of roles. I'm always a sucker for Cushing, and many of these other classical actors and actresses kind of miss that classical acting that these people portrayed. Vincent Price, Christopher Lee, Donald Pleasance, they all kind of came from that almost thespian stage actor character. And I kind of miss that in a lot of movies nowadays. The score is very solid and really helps to enhance the creepy mood and atmosphere here and amplifies the creepiness of these tales and the suspense in them. And while the stories may not be as elaborate or in-depth as the HBO series due to the film's length, they managed to keep the stories short and simple and capture the core essence in a quick, smooth pace that doesn't drag. It does suffer from what I feel is the best segment up front problem of many anthologies, but it will help draw you in, and the rest of the stories, while they vary in quality, are all still at least fun and entertaining, and at least good. I feel there are definitely better horror anthologies. This is still a fine example of a good, highly entertaining anthology film. You can't go wrong investing 90 minutes of your time into this classic. So overall, I give it a rating of 4 pancakes.
I got some facts here before I go into my review.
Sure.
This film got a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, 6.9 out of 10 on IMDb. I don't know if this was current or back then, but it cost £170,000 to make. And I guess it just says in the U.S. it grossed over $3 million.
That's pretty good. So plus you don't know how much it did in Britain, which would probably be a lot more, and in Europe.
A lot of horror people were big fans of this movie, especially Stephen King and George A. Romero. They wanted to actually remake this movie, but what ended up happening is they created a Creep show about 10 years later, which is one of my favorite anthology
Mhm.
movies. So anyways, when I go into my review, so this movie is it's rated PG. I can see, I can see why it's PG, but there's still even stuff they get away with, the heart, the intestines, besides the end
Yeah.
fire pit,
The
but
cooking system is very good.
the other fire. I think they had some of the shots with the intestines, they excluded it because they could have got a high rating. I don't know, it's different over in Britain, but besides that, I don't find any of this cheesy.
No.
This film, it ages well. It holds up. I probably show this to anybody and they'd like it. These stories, they're just creepy enough. Obviously, these people get their comeuppings, but the acting, I think the acting is great. I think Joan Collins did great in her scene. Peter Cushing, he excelled tremendously. And sorry to say, I've only seen Peter Cushing in Star Wars: A New Hope. So
he's great in other stuff.
I'm sure he is. He's great in that movie. But yeah, obviously, so I've seen bad guy, good guy here. But I thought it was, especially learning the background of it, excellent performance. Patrick McGee does a great job as George Carter. There's some ones that, Reflections of Death and Wish You Were Here, not the greatest, but they still are watchable. They don't bore me. Like you said, the movie doesn't drag. It keeps going. What else here?
Who was the guy that played the Crypt Keeper? I forgot.
I think it's Ralph Richardson.
I think you're right. He did a good job.
He did a good job. And I like how at the ending, came together, and obviously, they're in hell or going to hell. And I like how he broke the fourth wall. Perhaps you are next or whatever. So this movie, just whenever I watch it, for me, this could be like a tradition movie. Like I gotta watch this every Halloween, or even not, it doesn't have to be Halloween season. And it's just like, I really enjoy it. And so I'm gonna rate this a solid 4.5 out of 5 cannolis. I really enjoy this movie, and I highly recommend this to anybody because it's not that bad that you couldn't even, like a little kid can't watch it. You talking about watching movies at 2? I don't. Maybe
this was one of them.
Maybe showed at 2 years old. I don't know.
I probably still have a VHS recording of it somewhere.
I don't know if it showed at 2, but this is like like 7, 8 years old. Sure, it's good.
Yeah,
I don't think they'll have nightmares. I mean, they'll be like, what kind of phone is that?
Hey now.
And just some of the stuff might be different, and obviously it's a different culture. But yeah, I think this movie is great, and I think the show was great. They made it in the 90s, but obviously this was a kind of a precursor to it, and also what we didn't talk about is I do enjoy the cover of the DVD or the movie, which is just like a skull with cobwebs. It's panned to like the left eye, and it's showing, and it says "Death Lives" and Tales from the Crypt. And then I know this is frequently paired with their next movie, Vault of Horrors, which I have not yet seen.
I don't think I've seen that one either.
Which I'm sure it's also great. But yeah, very solid. Definitely recommend. 4.5 out of 5 cannolis.
I think it's a good example of a solid anthology film. It's definitely a lot of fun. And like I said, it holds up pretty well because of the professionalism of the actors.
Yes.
And I think it also has good cinematography. I know we didn't talk about that much, but it's well shot too.
Oh, it is. I mean, Reflections of Death, the point of view cinematography is very good. I mean, a lot of it. It's a very good movie.
All right. Anything else you got there, Scary Perry?
About this? No.
Do you think next time Delores isn't going to drop her pancakes?
She'll probably drop them again, knowing her.
Bitch.
So J Bones is always going to be cooking.
Ah, man. J Bones is always cooking something. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up for this episode. So I'm Rocco, a.k.a. TheMadPancaker.
And I'm Scary Perry.
So join us for our Thanksgiving episode next time, where Ted Raimi will be selling condoms in the men's room. Till next time, check please.
Delores!
International House of Horror.